This podcast is not intended to provide any investment advice. The opinions expressed here by either the hosts or guests do not necessarily reflect the views of PSA, Collectors Holdings, or any of their affiliates. Any discussion of collectible values in the past or present is not a guarantee of future performance. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another week of the PSA Pod. I'm your host, Ryan Green, here by myself this week in the NBA Jam studio, but not by myself on the show. Very excited to welcome in Kevin Lenane, the president of PSA. We've got some big news this week. Kevin, thank you for taking the time to join us.
Yeah, of course. Always a pleasure.
Well, I said big news, and this is really big news here at PSA, and we're really excited for this. The big news this week, we are announcing the return of the bulk submission level at $22 a card, 25 card minimums per order, max DV of $199 per card, open exclusively to Collectors Club members. Obviously, this is very big news for customers and another incentive for, Collectors Club members. But let's start by talking about the significance of this service level opening in the sense of what allowed us to do this now after it's been closed for over a year and yearned for by customers.
Yeah, and then no surprises here. A lot of it has to do with our progress on the backlog. And so we're kind of getting very close to the end of that backlog. There's some notable exceptions, various account issues, et cetera. But for the most part, we're almost all the way through that. And this has freed up capacity to work on tiers that will generate higher demand, which typically are lower priced. So operationally, that's kind of what enabled us to do that. We were able to kind of dip our toe in the water a bit with the special at the National. We saw a tremendous amount of demand there. And so that was a good test ground for us to say, okay, what's the demand look like in this price range? And so, we kind of did a little napkin math and figured, okay, here's the price we can offer, where we can take in a certain amount of orders and then wrap them all up in 4 months or less, right? And that's a big thing for us too, is we wanted to be able to take in a service that was affordable, collector friendly, but also didn't take 8-9 months. So, the 120-day turn is still a long time. We hope to do better on that, but that's kind of the maximum amount of time. And so we have more controls over the amount of volume we take in now, and we have much better insights into submission volume, et cetera. So I wouldn't anticipate us getting into another situation where we're, double past the turnaround time.
This is really big news for especially, set collectors, base card collectors, set registry members, people who are very active in PSA set registry. And that was really a big focus with the July national special that you mentioned, which was $18 a card. Were you surprised at all by how popular that was with customers through the month of July?
I wasn't at first, but I think towards the end, it got very, very popular. And, I think it's a good sign for the hobby, right? It's at $18, right? There's a lot of cards you can grade at 18 and at 22. So the world of stuff to grade increased dramatically, but also the price per card was appealing enough to really generate significant demand. So I would say I was surprised in some way by the length of time the high demand went on for. But as I also mentioned, we have good controls over submission volume and these sorts of things. So it gave us a lot of good intel for the bulk tier.
Yeah, you mentioned it's a great time for these specials. Some product releases, some key ones from 2021 were delayed into the spring and summer of 2022. So as those cards are hitting the market, it's a great time to get them together en masse, send them to PSA for grading. And as I mentioned, this is exclusive to Collectors Club members, $99 for a year to join right now. Visit psacard.com/join to do that right now, to take advantage of the bulk submission level and much more. Kevin, you talked a little bit about how the position we're in, and you mentioned the word capacity. Let's expand on increased capacity, starting with our East Coast hub of operations in New Jersey, in Jersey City. What's the latest on what's happening at that facility? I know we get a lot of questions on social media about people asking if we're grading there yet. What's the latest with that facility and what's going on?
Yeah, and I would also add to, I wanted to say something about Collectors Club, which is to say, you know, obviously the access to these lower tiers is a huge value for collectors, but we are super excited. We have so many things that we're going to add to the Collectors Club membership. We've got pricing tools and browsing tools, selling tools. There's all kinds of different stuff that we're going to put in there as extra benefit. So, stay tuned over the next, call it 6 to 9 months. We're going to be adding a lot of things to that membership versus just kind of having the discounted grading services available.
Yeah, it's a great time
so I just wanted to quick plug that. Yeah. So on the capacity question, we spent a lot of time last year making sure that we could grow our capacity in California. We still have some room to grow there, but we also have 2 new locations. So we have operational location in New Jersey. It's not the full size location yet, but it's sort of, we call it the Skunk Works, but it's the early stage location. And then we have the larger location opening, next year. But we're already operational there. We also have a location in Tokyo that we will be operating. I think the building's accessible in January. We'll probably be grading out of there by the end of Q2. That's an ambitious date, but I hope we get there. But those 2 places really allow us, there's new grading talent there. There's localized demand. I always like to talk about this, but there's kind of higher end demand. So if you're a collector in Tokyo and you have a expensive card you want graded, the only option right now is to kind of do a 7-month send. You've got to submit it with our team in PSA Japan. It comes to California, comes back, and by the time you get everything, it's 6-7 months later. A lot of those collectors don't want to part with their cards for that long, and there's concerns about people get worried about shipping and all those other things. So having on-site services in localized areas, it always generates a lot more interest and demand at the higher tiers. And we expect to see that in Tokyo and also New Jersey. And in New Jersey, the nice part is there's just such a huge collecting group. There's just tons of experienced graders and collectors out there. So the pool of people that we can bring in New Jersey is really high. And so, it allows us to do a lot of things. We're going to do, different media there. We're doing some Funko there. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we can do in New Jersey that'll increase our capacity, but it's really about the talent pool that's there, right? There's a lot of access to experienced card hobby talent in that area. And so that one in particular is really going to increase our capacity, right? That's a big number jump, double-digit percentage jump on capacity from New Jersey.
And let's expand on international too. That was very good detail about what's happening in Japan. There's also efforts going on to expand and kind of evolve our presence in places such as the UK and Canada.
Yeah, and China. So we've opened, we call them like concierge centers, but they're basically kind of how Tokyo has been, which is you've got PSA employees, an official location, you can submit your cards, and then they get kind of handled and packaged up and sent to the U.S. for grading. And in some cases, maybe in China, they might actually go to Japan eventually. But regardless, that's kind of how we start. If we say, hey, this could be a good location to open a PSA office, it all starts with a submission center like that. And so as the volume increases out of China or Canada, we'll start to look at, okay, how, are we doing 2,000 to 3,000 units a day? Okay, well, then it might make sense to put an actual grading team there. So that's kind of a good approach to building out international locations is to kind of seed them with these submission centers and then, see where the volume goes from there. So in all those places, our hope is that they grow significantly enough to open up a smaller kind of PSA outpost. I don't know, if it'll actually happen in all those locations, but that's the idea, which is sort of like this measured international expansion. But we're super excited. We did get a ton of volume out of our first set of orders from China and the UK, and PSA Canada's obviously been operating for a while, and they're doing a great job.
That's awesome. And you mentioned this is the first step to evolving to something like what we have in Japan coming, which is going to be a full-on grading center where people's turnaround times are going to go from months all the way down to a much more reasonable timeline. Let's talk about turnaround times here for domestic orders as well, because I think that's one of the things that gets lost in the mix when we talk about the backlog from 2021 clearing up is turnaround times reducing and kind of getting back to, trending in the direction of pre-2021 levels.
Yeah.
What goals are there in the US for turnaround times at, multiple of the lower service levels heading into 2023?
Yeah, and I think this is one where we really wanted to be sure that we had a handle on. When I mentioned about getting a handle on our data and making sure that we understood submission volume and receiving volume, one of the biggest things we were driving at there was how can we give an accurate turnaround time that we can actually meet. And, we've done this, we've been sort of tinkering with this for a while where we've given super conservative, there's a period of time where I think it was a 90-day turn on economy, and we were turning them around in an average of like 28 days. And so, we're trying to be very cautious with how we approach that. But the plan right now is to have the longest turnaround be 120 days, which is for the bulk tier. We can see very clearly that if we take in a certain amount of volume at that tier, we know we can return it in that time. And so as we get better at that, and as we get really refined about what we take in and what we ship out, I actually think those numbers could come down even further, where you might see the max turnaround time be 90 days. But for now, we're talking max of 120, and then the subsequent service is 90, 60, 30. So it's a much shorter. 4 months is really the longest you wait in kind of this new era of control, submission control. And so, but we would actually look to shrink that even more. I will say this too, as a collector, one of the most important things, obviously you've got some limits in terms of the value of cards, but where you certain declared values have to go on certain tiers, but it was always important to me how quickly I'd get them back. There was always a premium placed on that. And we also want to provide distinct turnaround time so that the tiers are clear. Hey, you're paying for this speed, or you're paying for this speed. And, we have to meet those turnaround times to make that useful, but it's part of what distinguishes the actual tiers, right? So if you really want your cards quickly, maybe bulk isn't the right thing to do. And so, that was really important to us, just to basically be able to better define those tiers and make sure that they are, they're distinguishable by the customers.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to find any of our customers that'll be disappointed in hearing that 120 days will be the max turnaround time for any service level at PSA.
It's huge. It's huge.
Well, another thing that we've gotten a lot of feedback from customers on in recent months is they've noticed our increased presence at shows. We were at the National as per usual, but it was our largest operational presence ever at the National. We graded thousands of cards. A lot of customers were very happy with the experience there, plus the ability to just drop off orders for us to bring back to grade on site in California. We also were at Comic-Con in San Diego. The Burbank Card Show last week, we took on-site submissions there. Talk about a little bit about our increased show capacity coming up in, not just the rest of 2022, but heading into 2023, and the importance of PSA having more of that on-site presence at major card show events, especially as the card show scene returns to normal, continues to return to normal here this year.
Yeah, and I would say, kind of putting on my collector hat here as well, I have distinct recollection of, going to a show and making a submission for whatever it was, if it was an autograph or a card. And I remember thinking, when I didn't, I was sort of expecting that I'd get it back, and they might say, oh, you'll have it in a week, or we'll mail it to you. And I was always kind of a little surprised. I was like, I really thought I was going to go in, get it graded, and then walk away with something. And that experience is really positive for people. Like, that gratification of getting your item back while you're there is just a great one. And so we want to be able to do more of that. I think it's a little tricky because of the setup cost for us to get, to set up at the National. There was a lot of people there. We had over 100 people at the National. So to set up there is a big expense, and it's a lot of logistical challenges. But there are things we can do, particularly at local shows, which we will be doing, which is that basically if we have a team there, and it's, say, in Burbank or Long Beach or what have you, we can take in orders, bring them back to the head office, grade them, and bring them back the next day. So we can actually do a lot of same show stuff at the shows that are more local. Obviously, having East and West Coast makes that premise even more exciting, because we can do that eventually for most shows, except for maybe the middle of the country. But that's kind of how we're thinking about it. And the truth is, it's a customer happiness issue, right? It's a positive experience to be able to do that at a show. And take homes are also nice because you can just bring them in and it's a little easier for the customer. They're already there transacting cards. But the actual kind of same show stuff is the really exciting part. I think that's something we're looking to do more of. I think we are also looking at ways to do more actual on-site grading and figure out how can we better mobilize our equipment to make it easier for us to physically slab on site. And we're not quite there yet, but you can look out for some solutions that will enable us to kind of drop right into a show and grade without a ton of setup. And I think that's going to be really key as part of our show strategy as well.
Well, and lastly, those sound like big developments heading into 2023. What other developments on the business side this month are you getting really excited about, not just here in Q4 of 2022, but heading into next year?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll tell you, the opening of Japan is a big one. So the opening of PSA Japan is really big. That one I'm really looking forward to because I just think it's a whole new world of collectors. It's a lot of TCG. I'm really excited about that. And that's going to be a big, we're going to eventually have 200 people out there. Wow. That's a big footprint. And I went out to Tokyo and, the customers that are out there are just so excited to have us there in person. It's a really meaningful thing for us to have a presence there physically. And so there's a lot of excitement on our end and on the customer side. So that one's going to be really exciting. I also am, as you mentioned, Comic-Con, I'm also really excited. In October, we're going to launch Funko. So PSA Pops, we're going to launch at Comic-Con. And I think that one I love mostly because I think the market growth, the potential for growth in that market is tremendous.
Yeah.
I've been to, every card shop that I go in, almost always it feels like the biggest crowd is in fact in the Funko section. And it's kind of a more diverse group. They're younger, older, different genders. It's a really interesting collectible market. And I just think there's a ton of growth there. The holders look great. It's probably more accessible to kids in terms of content. So that's a really exciting one as well.
That I can't wait for. I know we teased it a little bit at the National at our collectors booth, and it definitely drew a lot of eyes, just a small setup. And like you mentioned, New York Comic-Con in October, it's going to be a little bit of a bigger setup. And I really can't wait. I really can't wait for customers to see that. I held one of the graded Funko Pop, holders in my hand. It feels really cool, substantial, and it looks like something you would love to display at home.
Yeah, exactly. They look amazing.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I would say in terms of big things that are upcoming would be a better connection to the vault. So making it, really obvious to our submitters, how useful and easy it will be to submit to the vault. So I really want to make sure that integration is smooth and easy to understand. But I think there's a lot of possibilities in better connecting PSA submissions directly to the vault. And, it already is. You can already do that, but kind of having a more seamless transition and working with the images and, allowing for some of the tech developments on top, like card management, et cetera. I just think that's going to be a really significant integration, and all the tech that sits on top of that to unite them. It's going to be a really positive customer experience.
Can't wait. The collectors.com/vault is where you can go to start now learning about the vault. But as you mentioned, there's a lot of developments coming on that front that are just going to continue to make that seamless end-to-end journey for customers with their collectibles really something special.
Yeah, it's super exciting.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And we are excited to say that we're going to make this a monthly feature with PSA President Kevin Lenane joining us here on the PSA Pod. We're going to have regular updates for customers direct from Kevin each month. So really excited to kick it off with a big announcement like bulk service coming back. I can't wait to see how excited our customers are about this because I know just seeing our social mentions over the course of the last several months, they pop up regularly. When is bulk coming back? When is bulk opening?
Yeah, yep.
It's here.
It's the one. This is the one where, people always say, people referred to us as closed for a while, even though there are the higher tiers open, and I understand why. This is the one where PSA is open, right? This is the big one that everyone was waiting for. So yeah, we're super, super excited. We hope everyone loves it.
Well, we're going to see the demand for it here pretty soon. I know it's going to be big. Kevin, thank you again for taking the time to join us.
Cool. Thank you.
And thank you to everyone for tuning again this week on the PSA Pod. I am your host, Ryan Green. We will be back next week with more. See you then.